In this presentation, I will give you a step-by-step example of developing a use case specification. The starting point is a use case statement. The use case statement can be seen as an answer to the focal question. It is a brief explanation of the general objective of the system and a brief description of how the objective is achieved. In our example, the focal question is how to reduce the risk of forest fires, and the use case statement is the goal of the system is to improve prevention and control of forest fires involving citizens, public authorities, and other subjects. The system relies on a mobile app, data collected from different sources, and the use of aerial drones in dangerous situations. Starting from the focal question and its general objective, we identify actors and goals. To identify actors, you should ask yourself and to the participants of this activity the following question. Who are the actors involved? In this case, we have residents, tourists, firefighters, etc. To identify goals, you should ask, why are we developing the systems? What are the objectives we want to achieve? In this case, we identify three goals: fire prevention, fire control, and involve community. In relation to the goals, we recommend to list who is contributing to them. For example, for fire prevention, we have inhabitants and the local agency that are involved. For fire control, firefighters, local agencies, and municipality are involved. To support the discussion, you can use a diagram similar to this one, in which you list goals on top and in which actors are listed at the bottom. To identify more actors, you can ask, who is contributing to this goal? To identify more goals, you can ask, what are the goals of this actor? At this point, we can start identifying the tasks associated to the goals. To identify tasks, you should ask, what are the activities that are carried out by the actors to achieve the goal? In this case, we start with the first goal, which is fire prevention. The tasks that help to achieve this goal are plan and execute periodical checks of the forest, plan and execute periodical cleanings, conduct informative campaigns, and set up safe zones. Then we have another goal, that is fire control, that will have associated tasks, and similarly for involve community. To support this activity, you can use this diagram, in which a goal is associated to the tasks. Here the tasks are associated to intuitive names like periodical checks, periodical cleaning, informative campaign, and setup of safe zones. Now that we have actors, goals, and tasks, we need to identify the ICT components. To do that, you should ask, what ICT components do we plan to use to support the tasks? In our case, we have mobile phones, which are selected because residents use them to communicate with the mobile app, cloud-like platform, which is managed by the local agency, and some terrestrial and aerial drones, which can be used to scout areas during dangerous wildfires. At this point, our representation is richer, as it includes all the entities, actors, goals, and ICT components. Having all these elements all together can help to elicit additional ones. Now the tasks need to be decomposed into steps. These steps are called task descriptions. Given a goal and a task, we need to detail the steps that are needed to perform the task. To identify the steps, we recommend to first ask the question, how is the task performed today? And then, what are the weaknesses or issues of the current approach? And finally, how can this be supported by an ICT system or digital tool? The list of steps that you derive for this last question is the actual task description. For example, in our case, if we consider the goal of fire prevention and we consider the task of periodical checks, we start answering the question, how is it performed today? Today, the local agency representative indicates the zones that have a higher priority for checks in a physical map, and then the representative establishes dates for checks in a diary. Which are the weaknesses issues of the current approach? The physical map is not automatically updated. The physical maps and documents are hard to navigate and search, and there is a lack of automatic updates of the information. So, how can this be supported by an ICT or digital tool? This can be done with a local agency representative that uses a digital map and flags the areas for check. Then, the representative adds notes to the digital map to schedule when a check should be performed. Then the local agency sends personnel to check the status of certain area according to the plan. The personnel reports the status of the area to the local agency, and finally the local agency takes action based on the reported status. When you provide the steps, you should make an effort to express them following this format. The actor does a certain action because of a certain motivation. For example, the local agency, which is the actor, flags geographical areas in a digital map for future checks, which is the action, to ensure low risk of fires in those places. This will help you to be clearer in the expression of the different steps. For each task description, you should also report the actors involved and the ICT components used for the specific task. In our case, we have the local agency, the residents are the actors, and the ICT components are a cloud platform and a certain program that is planned to be used for planning. From a graphical point of view, you can take the task name and link it to the actors and ICT components. This can help identifying additional actors and components. Now our system is defined, and we need to analyze potential impacts, drivers, and barriers. We start with impacts. To elicit impacts, you should ask, if the system were to be developed and used, which impacts do you foresee in both the long and short term? More specifically, for each goal with associated task, you should ask the following questions. What could be the impact of this goal achieved through those tasks from the economic viewpoint? What could be the impact of this goal achieved through those tasks from the social viewpoint? And the same thing, consider the environmental and the governance viewpoint. So you should consider all these four dimensions in relation to impact. In our case, you can take the first goal, which is the prevention of forest fires, and you can list the associated tasks, which are periodical checks, periodical cleaning, informative campaign, and setup of safe zones. Then you list the different impacts. The economical impact is less resource for controlling wildfires. The social impact can be more sense of safety. The governance impact can be less emergency. And the environmental impact can be less wildfires and more vegetation. The same thing should be done for all goals that you listed before. A similar exercise is done for the drivers. You should ask, what are the drivers that can facilitate the actual realization of the system in practice? Also in this case, you should distinguish between economic, social, environmental, and governance-related drivers. For example, the drivers for the prevention of forest fires are economical drivers can be the regional investments, social drivers are the citizens' demands, governance related are the need to adhere to regulation, and environmental related is the need for forest preservation. And finally, the same exercise is done for barriers. You should ask, what are the barriers that can act as obstacles towards the development of the system, again divided by dimensions? For example, economic barriers could be that the funding is insufficient, there are difficulties in planning, and some areas are difficult to access, and therefore it is difficult to prevent forest fires. At this point, you have completed the use case. Please use the template to report it. You can find the template at this link. Thank you.